In 1980, a Japanese supermarket chain called Seiyu wanted to launch a private label of generic products. They wanted plain rice in plain bags, plain pencils in plain packaging, and plain household goods that did not need to advertise. The label was supposed to be a small cost-cutting experiment, a way to sell to budget-conscious shoppers during a recession. The label was named Muji Rushi Ryohin, which translates roughly to no brand quality goods. 45 years later, Muji operates over 1,000 stores in more than 30 countries, generates over $4 billion in annual revenue, and has become one of the most recognizable design brands in the world. The defining feature of the brand is that the brand is not visible on the products. This is, on its face, a paradox. Branding is supposed to be the entire purpose of putting a name on a product. A brand is what allows a company to charge more for an item than its unbranded equivalent. The absence of a brand should mean the absence of pricing power. Muji has built a global business on the inverse of this principle. They charge a premium for products that have, by design, no visible brand identity. The mechanism by which this works is more interesting than the typical branding story. When Muji launched in 1980, the goal was genuinely cost-cutting. The original products were exactly what they appeared to be: cheap rice in cheap packaging. The savings came from eliminating the packaging and marketing budgets that branded products carried. The original consumer was a budget shopper looking for the cheapest possible rice. Within 5 years, an unexpected pattern emerged. Some of the customers buying Muji rice were not budget shoppers. They were design-conscious shoppers who actively preferred the plain packaging. They liked that the rice did not have a cartoon character on it. They liked that the rice did not have aggressive marketing copy. They liked that the rice looked like rice, rather than like a product trying to convince them that it was a particularly exciting kind of rice. Muji's executives initially treated this as a curiosity. By the late 1980s, they understood that it was, in fact, the actual market for their products. The budget shoppers were a minority. The design-conscious shoppers were the majority. The reason was that Japan, by 1985, was already deep into a period of consumer overload. Every product on every shelf had been redesigned, repackaged, and remarketed dozens of times. Every package shouted at the customer. Every label promised something. In that environment, a product that shouted nothing was loud. This is the insight that Muji built itself on. The absence of branding was, in a saturated market, the most distinctive form of branding available. A plain brown box on a shelf full of bright cartoon packaging draws the eye more effectively than another bright cartoon package would. The Muji aesthetic was, in effect, a contrarian visual position. It only worked because everyone else was doing the opposite. Muji's expansion strategy from 1990 onward was built around this insight. They opened standalone stores. The stores looked like the products: plain wood, plain shelves, plain signage. The interior of a Muji store was, deliberately, the visual opposite of a typical Japanese department store. Where a Mitsukoshi or Isetan store was busy, ornate, and decorated, a Muji store was quiet, plain, and minimalist. The customers were, again, not budget shoppers. They were the same design-conscious shoppers who had been buying Muji rice, now buying Muji clothing, Muji notebooks, Muji bedding, Muji furniture, and eventually Muji houses. The category did not matter. The aesthetic did. The pricing reflected this. Muji products are not cheap. A Muji notebook costs more than a generic notebook. A Muji shirt costs more than a generic shirt. The premium is not large, but it is consistent. Customers pay it because they are not buying the product. They are buying the aesthetic. The product is the medium. This is the part of the Muji story that most analyses miss. Muji is not a no-brand brand. Muji is a brand that has built its identity on the specific aesthetic of brandlessness. The aesthetic is the brand. The visible absence of marketing is the marketing. This distinction matters because it explains why Muji's strategy is not easily copied. A competitor can launch a generic-looking product. The competitor cannot, easily, launch a generic-looking product that customers recognize as part of a particular aesthetic tradition that has been carefully maintained for 45 years. The no-brand aesthetic only works as a brand when it has the institutional weight of a brand behind it. The international expansion of Muji has been a long, careful demonstration of this principle. Muji entered the United Kingdom in 1991. The early stores were modestly successful with a niche of design-conscious shoppers. By 2000, the stores were significantly more successful as the broader market in the UK had begun to converge on aesthetic preferences that Muji had been refining for 2 decades. Muji entered France in 1998, same pattern. Muji entered the United States in 2007, same pattern. The pattern was always the same. In each new market, Muji would open a small number of stores in design-conscious urban districts. The initial customer base would be small but loyal. Over 5 to 10 years, the broader market would shift in Muji's direction, not because Muji marketed aggressively, but because the absence of aggression became, in each successive market, more appealing as those markets became more saturated with conventional marketing. There is a structural lesson here that applies far beyond retail. In any saturated market, the dominant strategy of the incumbents is to add more. More features, more marketing, more packaging, more variants. The incumbents do this because, in their internal logic, more is always better. If a competitor adds a feature, you must add a feature. If a competitor runs an ad, you must run an ad. The escalation continues until the entire market is exhausting to participate in. Muji opted out of this escalation 45 years ago. They have continued opting out of it ever since. While their competitors added features, packaging, advertising, and complexity, Muji removed those things. The removal was itself the differentiator. This is a strategy that requires institutional patience. It does not look like a winning strategy in any given quarter. It looks like a winning strategy over decades. Muji's first decade was a curiosity. Muji's second decade was a growing niche. Muji's third decade was a global presence. Muji's fourth decade was a cultural reference point. The compounding only became visible in hindsight. The other lesson is about who you are competing with. Muji's actual competitors, in any product category, are not generic store brands. Muji's competitors are the high-design boutique products that occupy the same shelf space. Muji competes in stationery with companies like Moleskine. Muji competes in clothing with companies like Uniqlo. Muji competes in furniture with companies like IKEA. In each case, Muji is positioned as the version of the design-conscious product that does not insist on its own brand identity. The customer who buys Muji is, in some sense, signaling that they are too sophisticated to need a brand on their products, which is itself, of course, a very specific form of branding. If you found this interesting, subscribe. We go deep on the stories of companies whose strategies invert the conventional wisdom of their industries. Drop your requests in the comments. Thanks for watching.